Welcome back to the King Films College Football Playoff Scenarios video. Let's get right into it with the tier list for this week, and we are going to be starting off again with Tier 1, can afford to lose, and this is going to encompass Alabama and Georgia as always. Alabama was able to escape with the win in the Iron Bowl, and because of that, there are scenarios in which they can lose, but if Alabama is able to win the SEC championship, they will certainly be in the college football playoff. For Tier 2, it is the same as last week. Michigan is the only team in it as Ohio State lost in the big game, which results in Michigan having a play-in game against Iowa in the Big Ten championship. Next, we have the great debate tier again, and now that Oklahoma is ruled out here, we have the great debate between Oklahoma State and Cincinnati. This is only if Alabama wins the SEC, because if Alabama loses, then both of these teams would probably make it, assuming that Michigan also wins. So getting into the scenario here, I've given Alabama the win, Michigan the win, Cincinnati the win, and Oklahoma State the win, along with Oregon just for fun. And as we can see here, Georgia has only a 37% chance to make the playoff. I think that's a bit low. So you see that this predictor is favoring Oklahoma State here at 93%, while Cincinnati is at 65%. So according to this prediction, it would be Oklahoma State's berth, which would be very disappointing to a group of 5 fans. But you can let me know in the comments below who you think the committee would favor in this scenario. Tier number 4 is going to need a miracle status, and it encompasses Oregon, Notre Dame, and Baylor. Like last week, Notre Dame, unlike the other 2 teams, cannot control their own destiny, and that is why they are sitting here despite only having the 1 loss to Cincinnati on the season. What they need is 1 SEC team, no Cincinnati, and a 2-loss Big 12 or Big 10 champion in their scenarios. So let's get into some. So in this one, we have a Baylor scenario in which Georgia beats Alabama, Michigan also wins, and Cincinnati loses, and Baylor wins their championship in order to give Baylor a 74% chance. Georgia and Michigan would be in the playoff, as stated before, and then the committee has to decide between Alabama, Notre Dame, and Oregon for that 4th spot, but Baylor would probably be the 3rd seed here. In this next scenario, I've given Iowa the win instead of Michigan, and you can see how that tilts the scales here, as Baylor still is likely to get a playoff spot. Notre Dame now moves to the 4th seed, while Alabama at 56%, even with the loss, stays in the playoff as well. Iowa and Oregon are just out, but the committee would have some deciding to do here. Final scenario I'll present in this tier is another Baylor scenario in which Oregon loses, making the percentages a little bit higher. So as you can see, Oregon is probably the least likely of all these teams to make it, just because they don't have many of those marquee wins, especially with Ohio State getting knocked out by Michigan. Oregon's marquee win there does not hold as much value, whereas Baylor has beat BYU, would have beaten Oklahoma State, and obviously Oklahoma as well. In the final tier, I will be looking at the case for Iowa to make it out of the Big Ten. Obviously, they only have 2 losses, but if you look at their schedule, they just have not played anyone. Their out-of-conference included Kent State and Iowa State, and while Iowa State looked good at the beginning, they have not proven to be, and that Big Ten West slate has just not been good for them, and they lost most of their games against good teams. So that is why Iowa is the cupcake. What they need is losses in the championship games by Cincinnati, Oklahoma State, Oregon, and Alabama, and then they need to pray. So looking at that scenario, you see that the committee has Georgia still making the playoffs. Of course, Michigan at 19%, lower than Iowa, so they're safely out. Alabama is at 57%. Baylor is safely in at 84%. Notre Dame is probably also safely in, so it's a debate between Alabama and Iowa in the committee's eyes, and I really think the committee would take Alabama here just because Iowa does not have any really good wins besides this one to Michigan. So it would have to be decisive, the win for Iowa. It can't be a close game, and Alabama has to absolutely get blown the doors off of by Georgia. But I say every week that I'll give you every team that can possibly make the playoff, and this week the long shot is Iowa. Finally, for the New Year's 6 Bowl projections, I pretty much have the same field as last week, but Michigan is subbed out for Ohio State. So number 1, Georgia plays number 4, Cincinnati. Number 2, Michigan would play number 3, Oklahoma State. In the Sugar Bowl, which is a contract game, I've got Alabama against Baylor, even if Alabama loses, which I think they will. In the Fiesta Bowl, this is a non-contract game. I've got Michigan State safely in against an SDSU team, assuming SDSU is able to win their conference. If not, this could be Louisiana Lafayette or Appalachian State if SDSU loses as well. As for the Rose Bowl, we've got Oregon against Ohio State, and then the Peach Bowl, finally, Notre Dame against Pitt in a pseudo-ACC showdown. Thank you for watching. Please be sure to subscribe to the channel and make your predictions for the college football playoff in the comments below.